Hey, hello and welcome all to another Lean In event, Women and Money, How to Ask for What You Deserve. I am Amrita and I'm the events team lead at Lean In Canada's Vancouver chapter, and I'm really excited to bring this event to you so that we can all get comfortable talking about money and eventually asking for what we deserve. Thank you for joining us and supporting Lean In throughout our events. And like I said, we would love to see your faces, so please turn on your videos and mute your microphones for the presentation. So today's agenda is as follows. We will be starting with Kelli's presentation and then open up the floor for any questions that you guys might have, followed by a short networking session so that you can share your money journeys with like-minded people. Before we get started, I would love to encourage you to become members of our Lean In community, and you can do so by going on our website and clicking on that red button that says Become a Member. It is free of charge and very easy to do. And I would also like you all to join a local Lean In circle. And if you do not see a local Lean In circle in your area, you can start one. If you'd like to know more about this, feel free to reach out to any of us at Lean In Canada. All right, so let's get started. I am so and incredibly happy to introduce Kelli as our speaker for today. Kelli Thompson is a leadership coach, speaker, and writer. She helps women leaders advance their careers with clarity and confidence so they can make an impact in the rooms where decisions are made. Kelli spent over 15 years in corporate America in the HR, training, and marketing fields, and as leadership development expert and keynote speaker before she leapt into entrepreneurship to start her own leadership coaching and speaking practice. She is the founder of the semi-annual Clarity and Confidence Leadership Program, an online leadership development program for women leaders. You can learn more about private and group coaching programs at kellyraythompson.com. Kelli, the floor is all yours.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. I see some of you are already in the chat talking about what you want to learn. I love using the chat during these because I think it keeps it really fun and interactive. So I would love if you would just pop in the chat and continue to tell me, what do you want to make sure that we talk about tonight? And maybe if you're not sure, exactly what it is you want me to cover, then maybe just say on a level of 1 to 10, 10 being the most comfortable, how comfortable do you feel talking about money? I would just love to get a gauge on, are we twos? Are we fives? Are we 10s? 2 out of 10. Awesome. And hey, I'm not even a 10 out of 10. So I saw Brett's question about even pricing as an entrepreneur, and I totally understand that, right? Because it's a touchy subject. Awesome. 2s, 5s, 3s, 6s. Y'all are in the right place. So let's talk more about money. And so Rita did a wonderful job of describing who I am. I did spend 15 years in corporate America. 10 of them, I was leading HR teams, training, marketing. So I do have a lot of experience on both sides of the fence. I have a lot of experience both negotiating pay as an entrepreneur, setting my rates, but I spent a lot of time in HR on the other side, setting wages, talking about wages, all of those different things. I'm certified in reality-based leadership. It's a drama-free approach to leadership. I was coach trained by Martha Beck. She's known as Oprah's life coach. I've never met a personality test I didn't like. So if anybody knows their Enneagram number or their Myers-Briggs, you can pop it in the chat. I'm an Enneagram 5. And like she said, I am I'm a leadership and career coach. So let's talk a little bit more about what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about women and money. We're going to talk about the numbers. We're going to talk about the costs of not asking. And I think they might surprise you. D, you're an 8 and an INT or FJ. I'm also an INTJ. So I'm a 5 and I'm an Enneagram 5. We're going to make some little asks that can help you get some big results. So let's just talk a little bit more. Let's dive right in. And I want to talk about the numbers, and you can let me know if any of these surprise you. So the first number that I think is really important, and this is a range, 65 to 82%. This is what women make as compared to men. This is not just an American statistic. This is a statistic that has been researched in Europe, in Canada, in America. And so it depends. A lot of people say, oh, women make on average 82% of what a man makes, and they call that the gender pay gap. I actually decided this year that I wanted to kind of throw away the whole equal pay day, because I do believe it doesn't represent women of color who continue to make even less than white women. So I think it's really important to know that there is a gap. Let me know in the chat, have you all been aware of this gap? Have you seen this gap in your organizations? Have you heard conversations about this? Let me know if this is something that you have seen or experienced. This is really important. So 60%, and I want to talk about why this matters when we talk about money. This is the percentage of job requirements men meet when they apply for jobs, whereas women often wait until they meet 100%. This is why this is so important. And I want to give you perspective on this from my time in human resources. So this was validated by LinkedIn data. So LinkedIn has been watching people, and they watch what jobs people post or people click on, and then they review, and then they see who actually goes through and applies for the positions. And they have confirmed previous research that women are only applying for 60%. What's happening is they are self-selecting out to lower paying jobs. I saw this in two places. As a leadership coach, I have women come to me frequently looking to make a career change or looking to advance themselves in their career. And what they come to me and they say is, I found this awesome job, but I only meet like 60% of the qualifications. I don't think I should apply. I think I should maybe go for this job. And what they do is they just move themselves down a notch to a job that might pay, $70,000 instead of a job that pays $90,000. Whereas a man will be like, hey, that sounds fantastic. Like, this sounds great. Having come from human resources, I've seen with my own eyes how women, very qualified women, will apply for jobs that they are way overqualified for or hold themselves back. Where men just think to themselves, this looks great. This looks like a lot of fun. I think I'm going to go for it. So I want you to notice if you're self-selecting out and you're applying for a job that you are more than qualified and settling for a lower salary, because this is going to make an impact here in just a second. I'm going to tell you why. 6 to 8. This is the number of years that women live longer than men. Therefore, our retirement dollars need to work longer. And when we're making a little bit less, when we're applying for jobs that are that we're more than qualified for, and maybe settling for a lower salary, we have a little bit less going into savings, a little bit less going into retirement accounts, and yet we have to make that last longer. Here is a fun fact. My husband is actually a financial advisor, and it's actually been a well-published study that women are better investors than men. And he will tell you firsthand that they're better investors than men. Why? They don't get as emotional about their money and make short-term poor decisions. When they're in the market, they do better with their money. So I don't want you to believe the myth that women are bad with money. So it's important for us to make sure that we are investing and we are, being paid what we're worth for roles that we're capable of doing. Here's the last statistic that might be surprising to you, and I'm going to talk about all three of these tonight. 2 hours. This is the amount of hours of unpaid work performed by women. Let me give you guys an overview of this. This is sometimes called the second shift, or the invisible workload of women, which is things like childcare, errands, house cleaning, home chores, shuttling people places wherever it needs to be. And in the workplace, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but have you noticed that women tend to take on more of the unpaid tasks like note-taking, party planning, organizing, employee relations? I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. Is this true for you? Just tell me in the chat if you've seen this. You have 2 hours of unpaid labor on average that men aren't taking on, right? So it's all of this extra strain against us. And so I want us to be aware of some of these things that are at play. Now, as I go through this presentation, I want us to be very cognizant of, because I've come from an HR background and I also work with women who are actively negotiating, actively looking, I want you to know that this is a both and approach. if you are in HR, if you are leading an organization, or you have the ability to influence the systems in place in the organization, I think it's our role as leaders who have impact to communicate with our leaders to say, hey, I think that we might have a gender gap in our workplace, and I think we need to take a look at it. So we have to address the systemic causes. And as women, we also need to make sure that we're asking for what we deserve and we're applying for roles that we are qualified for. So I've missed some comments and I want to go here and read some of these. So you've seen a lot of these in your personal life and what you work with women in your office. Yes, 82% is higher than you expected. For some white women, it is up to 82%. But like I said, not everybody is white. And so women of color, Black women, Hispanic women, Indigenous women make even less. And so I think it's really important to know that the gap is wide and it's not always consistent. So I want to talk about the costs of not asking, because I think that not asking has a cost. And so I had a client that I was working with, and I turned on the camera just like this for one of our sessions, and I could tell she was just hot. And I said, so, what's going on? What do you want to talk about today? And she said, Kelli, she's like, I just found out that, in the last couple of weeks, that a coworker of mine makes significantly more than I do. And she was in HR at the time. And she said, you know what, Kelli, it's not even just a couple of thousands of dollars. She's like, I'm talking a significant amount. And we have the same qualifications. We're doing a very same level of work. She's like, it's just not fair. She's like, I've gone in and I made a list of, many of the things that I've accomplished in this role and what I can bring to the organization. I went to the online resources like Glassdoor and LinkedIn and checked to kind of see what people in my role are making in my industry. And she goes, then, I even just kind of, since I'm in HR, looked at some of my own resources. And in fact, I am underpaid and I brought a lot of value to the organization. And I have just as many qualifications as this other person. And I said, okay, wonderful. I said, well, what happened when you went in and asked for, this change in your salary when you went to go talk to your leader about it? And she's like, Kelli, I haven't asked. And I said, well, why haven't you asked? She goes, I don't know. She goes, I guess I feel like I shouldn't have to. So tell me, how many of you have ever had that thought? You just feel like you shouldn't have to ask. And I think that mindset is really expensive, right? Like, I just shouldn't have to ask. People should just know yes. And so I want to talk a little bit about why this is so expensive, why this thought, I shouldn't have to ask, is so expensive. In her case, and I think in many cases, it is expensive, not just to our paychecks, it's expensive to our peace, our potential, and our paychecks. So we're talking about money, but there's so many other things that go into making money before we even get to the money, okay? So when we're not asking for what we need, it costs us our peace. It costs my client in her peace this day, because you know what? She was feeling resentful. She just assumed that her organization shared the same expectations that she did, and she felt really misunderstood, right? So it's costing her in her, in her peace. It's costing her in her potential, costs us in our potential. When we're scared to ask, not just for money, but for the things that we want and need, it impacts our work-life balance, like our ability to ask our employer to say, hey, can I keep my work from home schedule once COVID's over? It impacts our ability to ask for the funds that we want to go and do a continuous learning opportunity, or to go to a conference, or to take a training course or get a certification. And it costs us in our paycheck. And so I want to talk a little bit more about what each of these mean. Okay, so let's say you took the leap and applied for a job that you felt not 100% qualified for. Any suggestions skilling up after you get that job? Awesome. Will you please ask me that at the end? I want to come back to that question. I think that is so good. I'm going to talk about that just a little bit. All right, so peace. We've talked about this a little bit, the resentment that she was holding, the things that it costs us in our potential, our work-life balance. When we don't ask, we're sacrificing opportunities to learn. At the end of the day, we're playing small, right? Because we're not getting the opportunities with projects, with trainings that we could be getting if we have the courage to ask. I think it costs us in our advocacy, and ultimately it costs us in our career growth, because maybe we stay stagnant. Maybe we don't apply for jobs that we're fully capable of doing. But most importantly, it costs us in our paycheck. Here's a really interesting statistic. And so there's actually a range. I've seen anywhere from like, the mid 350,000s to a little like to, in the 600,000s. But they say that women will lose almost $500,000 over the course of her career by not asking. I want to talk about what this accumulates. So it's not just salary dollars. Yes, it's the cost of salary dollars, but remember, when you don't ask, and I have something in here called a 401k. I also need to know that in Canada, you may have other company sponsored retirement programs. And so when we make less money, we're contributing less of a percentage into our company sponsored retirement program. If your organization has a match, if they match your retirement savings, you're making less in that match. If they pay you an annual bonus and you're not asking for what you deserve, if your bonus is 25% and you're making 25% of a bonus on a little bit less salary than you are capable of making, and then it impacts all of that compound interest over time. That's why it's so important to be cognizant of asking for what you want and need now, because it starts to snowball over time. Another interesting statistic is that men initiate salary conversations 4 times more often than women. As an HR professional, I have seen this. And let me just tell you all a little secret. So when I worked in HR, and I've talked with Angela Champ about this. I know that she is your chapter president, and her and I have actually had an interview conversation about this. We just expect people are going to negotiate. I know sometimes like we think, oh gosh, if I negotiate, they might see me as greedy or as selfish, but like we expect you to negotiate, sometimes there is room. And so it is okay to ask and to negotiate. And here's something else that's interesting. If a woman does ask, she asks for 15 to 20% less than her male counterpart. So the cost of not asking is high. And I want us to keep in mind that it's not just the money that's the cost. I want you to also think about how not asking for what you deserve costs you in your peace, in misunderstandings, lack of expectations, resentment, frustration, all of the things, the unpaid workload, the potential as well for growth, learning, and development. Please cover the money percent or dollar amount to ask for when doing an annual review. I will. Yep. At the end, I'm going to talk about the 3 money conversations women should have. And so if you have something in the chat that I didn't respond to, when I get to the end or when I get here, and if I haven't answered you, I want you to pop it in the chat again. It's just because I didn't catch it, but I want to ask it. So I have a friend in this situation. She's an HR professional. How can she ethically use this information to inform her ask without revealing she's using information that is potentially private and confidential? Perfect. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to answer that question. Wonderful. All right. So at the end of the day, you can't expect what you won't express. So in the chat, let's talk about sometimes what gets in the way of our asking. And then I want to give you really practical tools and scripts at the end to answer all of the questions you've been putting in the chat. These are awesome questions. What is a phrase, put it in the chat, or a word that describes money to you? Like, what message have you always been taught about money? And maybe it's a word that you describe. Maybe it's a phrase, money's essential. Okay, maybe it's a phrase. It can be good or bad, right? Because we've all heard different messages. Freedom, don't talk about it, right? Yeah, freedom. Money means freedom. Never enough. It means independence. These are great freedoms, options. You need to save it. You have to work hard to earn it. Independence, travel, yeah. Freedom, independence. Has there been any messages that you've been taught from your family, your culture, your employer? Sometimes self-worth. Yeah, the amount of money you have can impact your self-worth. Absolutely. That don't talk about it. I want to tell you my family's money story. My family's money story was and continues to be money is tight. Everywhere they looked, money is tight. Not to sound too greed. Men should make more money because they have to support the family, right? We've all heard different money messages. My money message growing up was money is tight. Everywhere I turn, scarcity, money is tight. We don't have enough money. Money is tight. Money is tight. So I just learned through my family that money was tight. And that started to inform all of my decisions. And I want to tell you a little bit more about how we can look at these money messages, what we believe about money, and boost our confidence, close our confidence gap when it comes to talking about money, asking about money, all of the things. So when you think about, like, I want you to just think, as we're reflecting through this, what money ask might be on your mind? And just maybe make a note. Maybe you're thinking, I saw some in the chat. Maybe it's having a salary conversation. Maybe it's talking about savings. Maybe it's talking about, how much you're making. Maybe you're going into a new role. Maybe you're going to talk to your existing boss, whatever that is. Maybe you want to talk to your spouse about taking money out of savings. And then think about, why can't you ask for it? So this is interesting. So when I was in corporate, I led a team. I led HR teams, I led training teams, I led marketing teams, and I felt like every week I had to go ask for money, and money in the form of budget dollars, right? Because money is all about, like, whether it's coming in budget dollars or salary. I felt like I was always going to ask for money. I needed more budget for something. Give me money to send my people to training. All of those sorts of things. And this is really great, Brett. Am I good enough to ask for that much money? Do I deserve it? Am I good enough? If you have enough to cover the basics, be grateful. These are all awesome, because one of the things I want you to know is that there will always be circumstances that relate to money. I don't know if you've noticed. We're going to have to, as an entrepreneur, set pricing. And people are going to have to pay us money. We're going to have to go to our leader and say, can I have budget dollars for this training or this project? We're going to have to go and negotiate our salary. We're going to have to, ask our leader for more money if we're not making enough. There's always going to be circumstances. And anytime those circumstances hit, I have a hunch that all of those old money thoughts are going to be coming back into play. So for me, every time I was faced with going to ask for more budget dollars, immediately in my head, ooh, money is tight. I don't know if I should ask my organization. You know what? Money is just tight. Money's tight for people. And when I was thinking that, how we feel, that creates how we feel. And so I would feel really hesitant. I'd feel anxious. I would feel maybe a little bit unworthy, like I maybe had to do a little bit more to feel worthy of asking for the money, because I had this belief that money was tight. What if I lose my job? Yeah, all these little feelings like worry. And so what would I do? My behaviors. Well, when I was feeling that way, how did I behave? Well, I delayed asking for the budget dollars I need, or I didn't ask for the budget dollars I needed, or because I had this belief that money was tight, I wouldn't ask for enough budget dollars. If I needed 10,000, I'm like, well, money's tight, so maybe I'll just ask for 5. So the results that I got was sometimes my projects failed because they were underfunded, because I didn't ask for the budget dollars I needed. Sometimes my teams didn't have access to the right amount of training because I wasn't asking for the training dollars that I needed for them to develop their skills. And it's this whole cycle. We could really try to change our circumstances and say, well, only if my organization had a better or a banner year, then I could ask for more money. But honestly, there's always going to be circumstances. So the only thing that we can change is our thoughts. I had really expensive thoughts when it came to money. So I just need to reverse this cycle. And I encourage you, when you're thinking about what you want to ask about, I want you to ask yourself, what results are you hoping for? What are the results that you want? Well, I wanted successful projects and successful teams. And what behaviors did I need to take? I needed to invest in them. I needed to make sure we had the right resources. I needed to make sure that we had all the tools that we needed to do our job. What feelings did I need to carry into these meetings? Well, I needed to feel confident, empowered, prepared. So was my money thought of money is tight going to help me? No. I had to think a more powerful money thought, a more high value money thought. And the more high value money thought wasn't money is tight. is money can come from anywhere. Money really isn't that tight. Money can come from anywhere. And I think it's always just remember, like a great reminder to look for evidence that, yeah, like over my life, money really has come from lots of places. So let me know in the chat, is there a more high value money thought that y'all can use instead of carrying in your expensive thoughts into your conversation? Because I want you to start thinking about that. What's a more high value money thought? Is it money is abundant? Money can come from anywhere. I am good enough, and money is I'm good enough to ask for the money I deserve. So let me know, tell me in the chat, what's a more high value money thought? So make the shift, okay? What would you do if you couldn't believe the reason that you can't ask? Right? Money is tight. I can't ask because money is tight. Well, the opposite of that is money is abundant. Could that also be true? Yeah, money is abundant. I saw all my peers get like budget money for projects all of the time. It was my own junky thinking that was keeping me from getting some of the budget dollars I needed. It's the same thing with salary asks. Oh, money is tight. I shouldn't ask for this much. No, money is abundant. I see people all the time getting raises, and the evidence supports that. So I want you, those of you who have put in here about how should I ask, what would I say? I want you to actually write the ask out on paper. So neuroscientists have shown that one of the ways to rewire our thinking is to actually write about it. It creates new neural pathways, new ways of thinking in the brain. And that way, when you get to that situation, your brain's like, oh, we've done this. We wrote our money ask. We talked about what Brett said, money can always be found. And since money can always be found, this is what I'm going to say. This is how I'm going to craft it. This is what I'm going to ask for. I want you to actually write it out, how you're going to start the money conversation, what you're going to ask, what objections might be, how you're going to present yourself, how you're going to feel. I want you to write about the whole experience. It's a great little takeaway that you can try. So let's close this up by talking like little asks that can give you big results. And I want you to talk about exactly how to ask. And I'm going to give you all some tools. So the anatomy of a great ask. Okay, these are just some things. I think people think that there's, one way to ask for something, and really there's not. What I always tell women, I tell anybody who will listen, actually, it's not just women, is that when you ask for something, how can you ask for it in alignment with your values? So if my values are love, respect, creativity, learning, and family, how can I ask for this in the spirit of creativity? How can I ask for this respectfully, right? So if you know what your values are, align your ask with your values. How would you ask in alignment with your values? Make sure that it's inviting and you're having a conversation about what you can create, and you're inviting them into a conversation. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a US Supreme Court judge who passed away recently. And, whether you're from the US or not, one of the things that she did was she was a wild advocate for women's rights everywhere. And she said, you know what, the greatest asks, the greatest conversation, or the greatest arguments, I guess, per se, when we're trying to change something, is invite them to a conversation. Invite them to a conversation where you can discuss salary versus making demands. Just invite them to a conversation. It's clear, it's energetic. For those of you who are entrepreneurs, Brett, I know you are because you've told me you are, and anyone else, but like, you have to have some sort of energy around it, right? That makes people just as excited as you are. So I would have gone in and asked my leader for money for training programs, and I would have gone in with excitement. I'm like, there is this thing, and we are so excited, and these are the results that we're going to get, and then this is the budget we need. It's a lot more likely that they're going to meet your enthusiasm. Keep it short, keep it focused, and at the end of the day, you don't need to be anyone else than you already are. Infuse your strengths, your personality, your uniqueness, everything into the ask. So 3 areas I want to focus on talking about money, and I want to give you conversation starters. Okay. And so we're going to have a time here in a minute where we're going to have some Q&A, and y'all can ask me some of those questions that were in the chat that I didn't get a chance to get to, so we can put those back. 3 areas to talk about money: your salary, your current salary, and a new job salary. For your current salary, this can be something as simple as I've been doing some research, via online, via the Canadian labor market statistics, via LinkedIn, whatever that looks like for you, maybe through current jobs that are posted. And I've noticed that perhaps my salary is not in line with current market rates. And I've contributed a lot to the organization, and here's my results. I'd love to start a conversation on if my salary is in line with current market data. That's just one way you can do it. For a new job salary, it can be something as simple as, thank you so much for the offer. Because of my years of experience and what I've seen in the market, I am looking for a salary of X. What can we do to have a conversation to get us closer to this salary? Or are there other benefits that we can talk about, right? Because sometimes it's not just the salary, right? Sometimes it could be all the little benefits that come with it. It could be the flex time. It could be the retirement plan contributions. It could be, bonuses. It could be lots of different things. Savings. Have conversations about savings, whether it's with your partner, whether it's with a financial professional or a financial advisor, whether it's even with something that you or someone that you can talk with in your HR team about making sure that you are set up for saving appropriately for retirement. With your partner, it could just be something like, I want to sit down this weekend and have a conversation to make sure that we're saving enough for retirement, to make sure I'm contributing enough. It could be finding a financial professional that you trust to make sure that you're using all of that hard-earned money and you're taking advantage of all your good investing skills that research shows that you have. For the unpaid workload, right? This is all the extra stuff that you do that you don't get paid for. This could be as simple as, I'm hosting a webinar tonight. This is normally the time that I go pick up my daughter from work. And I just asked my husband, I'm doing a webinar tonight for some lovely women from Lean In, and I would like your help driving to pick up my daughter from work. And he's like, of course, right? But sometimes we just stress and we try to figure it out, or we need help around the house, or we get asked to do things at work like party planning or errand running. It's okay to ask for help. I have things I'd like to focus on. And so I would love your help with planning this party. I have a client. She goes, because she's one of the only women in the office. She actually works for a financial services firm. She goes, I'm the only woman around here. So I always get all the party planning stuff and I have to shop for the groceries. And she's like, you know what I did? Because you were talking about this. She goes, I outsourced all that. She goes, we have groceries delivered now. She goes, and whenever they want a party, she's like, I hire that out and they can pay for it. And I'm like, amen. Because you have more important things to do that will help you earn money instead of, errand running and party planning, etc. A lot of women don't say no enough. Yes. Angela, you said something. If your company talks openly about pay equity or diversity, you can bring up yes. And if you are in a position in your organization to promote pay equity and diversity, this is a wonderful time to do this. A lot of organizations are doing this. And there is, I can't remember the exact statistics, but I do know that companies who have pay transparency have a smaller pay gap than those who do not. So if you want some scripts, okay, I have 5 pages. I think it's 5 pages. It's 4 or 5 pages of scripts for you. Just email me at kelliraythompson.com. All you have to do in the subject line is put ask scripts. And I gave you a couple words tonight on the webinar to use, but I didn't have time to give you all 10 I have in there. If you want scripts that you can copy and paste into an email or you can memorize, send it to me. I have salary negotiation scripts. I have current, like talking with your current employer about salary. I have scripts to set boundaries. I have scripts to ask for a project. I have scripts to ask for help. Okay, so just send me an email, kelli@kelliraythompson.com with the subject of ask scripts, and I will reply back to you and send you this document full of the ask scripts. So if you give me an email, you're gonna get an email back from me because I wouldn't have time to read all of the scripts. So end of the day, I want you to keep track of your salary data resources, okay? Glassdoor, LinkedIn. I was just talking with Amrita before the call, and the Canadian labor market statistics has information on that as well, with the types of jobs and what they pay. There's another, even just like looking for jobs, when you're actually out job seeking, you could find salary. This is my best tip. I want you to keep a success journal. What makes you unique? Keep a list of all of those things that you've accomplished, because when it comes time to negotiate your salary, when it comes time to talk to your employer about maybe some pay inequity, you have a list of all the things that you accomplished and what this did for the organization. And it's not just the results that you bring, the financial, results that you bring. What energetic value do you bring? Like, don't discount that unique, like, teamwork, camaraderie, collaboration, all those things that you bring. Okay. So craft the ask, write it out, just like I told you in the beginning, write it all out the night before or whenever you need to do it. Write yourself into making a confident ask. Prepare all of the facts and details with the money data, your performance data, and then make the ask. I have a script for this in the thing I can send you. Your challenge is to do 5 small asks in the next week. Okay. When we practice building our confidence with low stakes items, it builds our confidence for when we have high stakes situations, right? So you don't just walk into the gym and, pick up the biggest dumbbell in the gym, right? You're going to pick up a smaller one and do some reps. So this could be little things like asking for a better seat at a restaurant, calling and negotiating one of your utility bills. This could be negotiating a price discount on a piece of clothing. I want you to practice with small asks, because the more confidence you can get in the small asks, the more ready that you will get in the big asks. And thank you, Angela, I'm so glad that you used my ask tips and you got results. So you are worth asking for. At the end of the day, you are always worth the ask. And I want you to start thinking about what expensive thoughts are getting in the way of asking for what you want. So with that, I think we have still hopefully plenty of time to take questions. Like I said, I'll type this again. If you want those ask scripts, just email me at this address. I'm putting it in the chat because I'm going to stop sharing so I can see all of your faces. What questions do you all have? And some of you had questions I didn't get to, so now is the time. I'd love to answer them. Okay, so please cover the money percentage or dollar amount to ask for when doing an annual review. Okay, it depends. And I know that's not the answer that you want to hear. So here's some rules of thumb. So in some organizations, and Angela, I would love your expertise. You can tell me where I'm wrong from a Canadian perspective. They say that 3% is like an average raise. And if you feel that you are significantly underpaid, you can ask for more than 3%, and you can ask for a out of cycle or non-cycle salary adjustment, because you might get your standard increase all the time, but you can ask for an out of cycle pay adjustment to be in line with market ranges. And so, yeah, that's what I would really think about with an annual review. And with an annual review, that's why what did I just call it? The success journal is so important, because when you go in for your annual review, and let's say your organization pays 2% for a average performer, but 6% for an above average performer, take in your documentation that shows you are an above average performer and why you deserve that 6%. Okay. When I was in human resources and when I was a leader of people, documentation. And we used to joke in human resources, even if it was back on the back of a bar napkin, it was documentation. Here's what I did. Here's the results, right? Because that's what we're looking for. We're looking for data, especially when we're making salary decisions. Why do so few jobs post salary ranges? I have thoughts on this. From an HR perspective, I'm going to just talk about the inside of what I saw inside of HR. I think organizations are scared. I think they're just scared to be transparent about pay, because they're scared that other people will find out what other people make, because there has always been a culture of secrecy around pay. That's my hunch. And I think that it's a very patriarchal way of doing things. I have a sense that Gen Z is going to demand something differently. The millennials are going to demand differently. As Angela says, they don't want their competitors to find out what they pay. Like, pay is such this weird wrapped ball of secrecy, not just for people inside, because we don't want to like know how much that person makes versus I make. But yeah, just like Angela said too, it's like that's how employers stay competitive, because they want to be able to pay more. That's such a good question. And I wish I had the answer. Dawn, I think that you should change that. You should go on a personal mission. Okay, let's say you took the leap and applied for a job that you felt not 100% qualified for and got it. Any suggestions for skilling up after you got the job? So first, yay. Second, I would question the thought that you are not qualified. So you feel not qualified, but is it true that you're not qualified, or is that just your sneaky old imposter syndrome? And imposter syndrome is something that 70% of women or people experience. And it's the belief or the thought that even though you are qualified, that you're going to be found out as a fraud, and that the job you got was just luck. And so I would really start to get some good high value thoughts around that. And if you determine that in fact, there are some skills that you need to acquire, that's where I would talk with your leader and just say, you know what, I took this job. I recognize I have a learning curve. What do you think could be most important for me to learn first to be successful? And use your intuition. When you're learning and growing in that organization, trust your intuition on what you believe, on where you should place your time and energy learning it first, and ask for the time off, ask for the training dollars, and go to your leader and say, you know, one of the things I observed is that I need to improve my project management skills to be successful in this role. And I really want to invest in myself so that I can contribute to the organization and get amazing results. I found this project management certificate online. I would love to take it. Here's the cost. Here's the time away. I'd love to get your support with this. So I have an ask script for that. I work in HR and specifically total rewards. Okay, another reason is that salary ranges tend to be pretty broad. Yeah, and without the full context, it's easy to make up stories about what someone should have. Yeah, so when I was in HR too, we'd have salary bands or salary ranges like, oh, this job pays from, 55 on low point, 75 on midpoint, and 95,000 on high point. And so to your point, there was so much in those bands because every organization has a different compensation philosophy. And so some of them have very few salary ranges for different levels of jobs, but they're very broad. And then some organizations have lots of salary ranges with ones that are very narrow. So there's so much that goes into it in terms of the organizations. One, does the organization even have a compensation philosophy? And two, what is their compensation philosophy? So there's a lot of working parts there. How do you show impact in an organization when your job isn't tied to quantitative results? I do strategy and business planning. That is right. So what you're saying is you don't necessarily have hard numbers. So I would start to, if I was thinking like an entrepreneur, I think one of the things that is really helpful is I would start to think about who are the internal or external customers that you serve. And I would get qualitative results like testimonials, impacts. When you're working with your stakeholders, you can get, quotes, snippets, feedback of, because of your business planning and strategy work, what have you made easier for the organization? What partnerships have you built? What are people saying about your work? How can other people do their work better because you're performing well in your job? So I know sometimes you don't always have hard numbers, but if I were working with you, and when I work with women on if we're in a coaching relationship and I'm helping them with their resume, sometimes people think, okay, well, hard numbers are just like sales, but there's numbers everywhere. It's like, did you stay under budget? Did you reduce expenses? Did you work with another team and that team upped their revenue? What about your turnover as a leader? Maybe you have better turnover. Maybe you have better employee engagement scores. I mean, there's so many different things that you could take a look at. I have transitioning from one role to another role at the same level. Does this warrant a raise conversation? Branding the role to content role, new tasks, but would involve dropping some admin tasks. I think that every time you're switching a new role, it's always worth a conversation. It's always worth a conversation to make sure that the type of tasks that you are doing and you are being paid for those tasks. Okay, so like for instance, if you're switching from branding to content, you're dropping some admin tasks. So if you and I were having a conversation, I'd say, okay, well, what about the new tasks that you're taking on? Are they at a higher level? Do they require a higher level of decision making? Do they require a higher level of strategic thinking? Because generally those types of roles pay a little bit more when you're making higher level decisions, having higher level conversations, higher level strategy. So even though you might be doing fewer tasks, you're doing higher level tasks. And at what level are you expected to make decisions? And I think that's always worth a salary conversation, and on your part, some salary research to make sure that you're equitable. Asking for a friend. I love this. Actually, Heidi, you crack me up, who works in HR. Oh, perfect. I'm so glad you asked this again. How could she ethically use internal salary information of previous HR employees in her company to inform her ask without revealing that she is using information that's potentially private and confidential? My client was in HR, and you know what? She has access to salary data. She was just transparent about it. She was like, I have access to this data, and it's like, so she was okay, and her culture would support her being like, hey, I can see this plain as day, and there's an inequity here. There are so many other points of data though that you can go out and find via some of those resources, via Glassdoor, via LinkedIn, via the labor market statistics, via even just going out and looking for jobs that might be posted. And you don't always have to reveal all of your sources. You can just say, I have done a tremendous amount of research in the marketplace and have determined that X number is a fair amount. And, as an HR professional, sometimes you have access to consulting, like compensation consulting organizations too. So you don't always have to reveal all your sources. I would just say, hey, I went out and found these data points, and I'd like to talk about what I've accomplished and how we can be more equitable with those data points. These are good questions. What else? If I missed one of yours in the chat, ask it again. I'm not ignoring you. I promise. You are worth asking for. So ask it again. The female, okay, I as a female was asked to clean out my manager's desk when he quit. Oh, no. It was full of confidential info, and I saw my coworker's salary. Then I backed up my request for a raise as I was very underpaid. It was not successful. Dang, Sierra, I'm so sorry. Are you thinking of asking again? Just because you didn't get accepted once, I don't want you to lose your confidence about that. I want you to know that you can continue to ask. And if you don't feel you're being rewarded equitably in the organization, it might be a good time to take a look and see, do my values align with the organization's values? And if there's a values misalignment there, then maybe it could be time to take a look at if you still want to keep working there. Yeah, Angela, sometimes the way you get what you want to leave is to leave the organization in another. Yep. Once we're in a role, it might be challenging to have a huge pay increase. Okay, yeah, so I want to talk about that. There is data, dang it, and I did include it. There was an article that came out that they said, was it 60% of women were willing to switch companies just to get a pay raise, which is good. And I've done that, but what I would ask you to think about and start a conversation in your mind about, or with your journal pages, is, am I leaving the organization just to get a pay raise? Or do I actually love the work I'm going to be doing? Because if you yes, we're talking about money. Yes, this is all important. But if you go someplace and you don't love what you do, you will be burnt out, you will be exhausted, and you will be miserable. And I I always tell women, if you're leaving an organization and the money is good and the job is good and you're doing it just to get a pay raise, I don't want you to overlook the factors that caused you to fall behind in salary in the first place. So even though you might get that initial bump, I want you to continue asking for more. And even though you're going to get that bump, I want to make sure that that bump is equitable for what's being paid in the marketplace. Don't just accept a job because it pays more than what you earn right now. As a lot of people do that. They're like, oh, it pays more than what I earn right now. This is great. Yes, and make sure it's in line with market pay. So here in where I live in the United States, I live in the state of Nebraska. There is a bill in our government that is going through discussion right now because they want to eliminate asking for your salary history on job applications. Because what they found, and I agree with this, is that it anchors decision makers to continue to pay somebody less. Like, for instance, I'm looking at Stephanie's face right now. I might have a candidate of Stephanie and I might have a candidate of Joe. And I might be like, oh, okay. Well, if I'm going to hire Joe, I'm going to offer him, $90,000 because he was making 80 and he'll be happy with it. Oh, but if I offer Stephanie, I'm going to offer $80,000 because she was making 70 and she'll be happy with it. So it perpetuates the cycle of underpayment. So my whole point with all of this is, yes, it's okay to take a jump or leave a company to get a pay bump, but make sure that pay bump is equitable and you're not just saying yes because you're making more than what you made before. Because like I said, in our government, we're trying to eliminate that so that we don't continually underpay women and people of color because they've already been making less. So I hope that makes sense. Okay. How do you negotiate a promotion if it's just automatically given to you without any conversation? Oh, okay. So you were just like, congratulations, you got a title change and a promotion. Perfect. I'd like to talk about my compensation package with this promotion. I have increased role, responsibilities, visibility, and decision-making resources. From the research that I've done in the market, it appears this role is typically paid XYZ, and I'd like to talk about when is a good time to have a conversation about my compensation. Anytime. In Canada, you've never had to put your current pay in application. Awesome. In government research grant applications, our government is refusing to take apps that have any information that would indicate identity. Okay, good. Awesome. See, the US has a long way to go, but I always think it's so important not to use your current salary as an anchor point. So always look to see if you're being paid with market. Other questions? These are so good.
We still have time to take one more question. So if you have it, please put it in the chat or you can just unmute yourself and go ahead.
I'm curious about your thoughts about pricing coaching packages.
Ooh, and I'm so glad you asked because you know what, Brett asked me that too, and I said I would get to it. So I have lots of experience with pricing coaching packages and lots of mistakes. So the biggest mistakes I've made as a coach, as an entrepreneur, and I see this for any entrepreneur, whether it's a graphic designer, a coach, a recruiter, I'm trying to think of other entrepreneurs I work with in my practice, is we price per hour. We trade dollars for hours. And we get into this thing where it's like, okay, so I'm going to give them 6 sessions or 10 hours of my time, and that is X number per hour. And we tend to underprice because we get into this whole dollars for hours thing. Instead, I would think about charging for the transformation that you make for that client. So I don't. Go ahead.
No, that's interesting because what I've noticed amongst my peers is that the first thing a client will do is do that calculation. That potential client will go, I'm not paying you $500 an hour, right? If you're 12 sessions at 3,000, you know the math anyways, right? So then the question becomes the transformation. How do you how do you monitor that? How do you agree when that endpoint is? How long does it go on if they don't do the work? So how do
Yeah.
you build in that accountability piece for them? So
Yeah.
I'm curious what you think, because this is a little bit more Wild West than the being in the HR and everything, which is where I was in a previous life, and I appreciate
Yep.
all of that. But now
Yep.
I live in a different world.
Yeah. So I have lots of thoughts. So if people are getting into the point where like they nickel and dime me, they're probably not my ideal client. So I just really don't even entertain that. When I'm working with clients, I mean, yes, I talk about the number of sessions as part of the package. And for those of you who aren't coaches, you can talk about the number of hours as part of the package. But I talk about so many other things too. I talk about what's happening in between sessions. I'm talking about their outcomes. I'm talking about what sort of projects we might be working on together. And so I don't really like, so I've never had anybody say that to me per se, but probably because they self-selected out, which is fine. But going back to the whole pricing conversation, I think it's really simple to underprice ourselves. And this is the first thing I noticed when I started pricing my coaching packages was I asked actually a friend of mine whose husband is like a coach. He was already charging double what I was charging. And I'm like, of course he is, right? Because they just like don't question. And so, I have done research into what other leadership and career coaches in my market that work with my type of clients do. Because I think that's a helpful reference point, right? And I price my services in accordance with, all the things they get, not just the time that they're spending with me on Zoom. So, and as I tell everyone, whatever you think you're comfortable with, add 20%. Because then that's what your male counterpart is making. The other thing that I do is as I continue to grow my business and add on clients, and I've had to do this recently with my one-on-one business, is I continually increase my prices over time. I don't do like an annual big bump. It's just as I grow my book of business, I slowly increase my prices because I feel like it's just like it's those little asks, big confidence thing, big results thing is I have a lot of tolerance to raise my prices $50 at a time versus 2 years from now, never raising my prices and go, oh my gosh, I need to double my prices. Well, that feels huge. So we could have a whole conversation about this, but I hope that helps.
All right. Thank you so much, Kelli, for that lovely conversation. I'm sure all of us are excited about doing our homework. Kara has a question. So can you repeat, add how much percentage?
Oh, 20%. I would say because on average, men make 20% more than us. So if you're an entrepreneur, set your prices, not just on the hours you work, no more dollars for hours, but on everything that you do with that client in that 6-month time frame or that 3-month time frame. Price that out and then add 20%.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelli, for clearing it out. But yeah, thank you for joining us today. And Kelli, it was a wonderful having you with us, and for all your help in making us feel comfortable about talking about money. And thank you. And as for everybody else, we do have a small networking session, and you are free to discuss what your challenge is going to be for this week.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Kelli, for joining us. So if you want to stay back for that, we will have a conversation on what are you going to change about your life and about the way you approach money. So in a minute, I'll put you in breakout rooms and feel free to discuss away.